Welcome back. All right, so doing something a little different on the Entertainment Guy channel today. I've had people ask here and there, are you ever going to resume your life story part? And the reality is that things get a little bit depressing. And that's even though my life story getting to that point wasn't necessarily the happiest all the way through, but as an adult, things didn't necessarily get better. So to review, and I have time as I'm waiting for the third period to start between Detroit and San Jose, so I figure I might as well do this. Because I wanted to do this earlier today, ran out of time, had to do the treadmill, which I documented on this channel. So keeping in mind, I'm shorter than most guys, so that right away, if you're looking for a romantic partner, is going to limit your options, because most women will not date a guy who's shorter, and I talked about that in the short male video that I talked about with, or where I talked about the documentary I watched on all that. So I often didn't fit in either. I'm odd. I'm different. I'm aware I'm different. I've always known. I've always known deep down. There's always been that voice in the back of my head going, what was that? What were you thinking there? That or what did you just say? Why did you say you didn't have to say? People heard you say that, and now you look like a giant goober. So being awkward and odd, so I figured I might as well put the embarrassment magnet up here, the anxiety magnet up here, and Donald, because times I would get kind of ticked off at myself. And so I was an only child. I didn't have a lot of close friends, and when I did, those close friends could last for years. They could last for a very short period of time. And it just, I did my best. I did. I felt like I was doing my best. I don't know, looking back, I guess there were times where there might have been a young lady who was interested and I was just clueless to it. There was one that I found out had a crush on me for decades, back in 2014 when I was suddenly single. And she'd had a crush on me since we went to elementary school together. So that was interesting. But I want to go through this. So I was awkward. I never had a girlfriend, and at least when I had one, it didn't last very long. Longest girlfriend I'd had was like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And when I was almost 26, I finally had my first serious girlfriend. Now, because of my religious beliefs and being a good Christian boy that I was at the time, I figured, okay, so this is my first serious girlfriend, and therefore, and also my first, therefore, this is the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with, was the thought in the back of my head, because that's what I had learned in church. So that's the one. So I tried to retcon things so that that person would fit into that mold of the one, and she did her best too with me, but we were not suited. We were never really suited for one another. We were physically attracted to each other, sure. I thought she was beautiful. I think she thought I was cute, which, comparatively speaking, with most other young ladies at the time, was definitely an upgrade from, I guess, in the right light. So, it ended up being this tumultuous 15 years. We were never really completely loyal to one another. I think we both knew deep down that there just wasn't enough there. There wasn't enough. Love's the wrong term. I'm trying to think of it broke down quickly. And the fact that we would do things separately often, huge red flag. But because this was my first real girlfriend, I had no idea. There were red flags all over the place that I just went, well, I guess this is how a relationship works. Which, looking back, it makes me, I regret, and the one thing I would say to people watching this is, I regret the things I didn't do, not the things I did, for most part. There are definitely some things I've done that I've regretted, but there are more regrets I have of things I didn't do. So eventually that relationship breaks and she leaves. It leaves me in this really, really dark place, because for 15 years I'd gone, okay, I'm with this person, we're raising kids, someday we're going to be just together and we can re-find each other. I really thought, once the kids are grown and on their own, I thought we'll find each other again. And when you just fall right back in love, it'll work. And months before my daughter graduated, she left. Not my daughter, but my ex left, and it threw everything into chaos. It was the toughest time I've ever had to go through, and I'm surprised I survived, to be honest, on some level. I was very lucky to have, and I'm looking at Bear right now. That's where I bonded to my cat Bear. So if you've followed my channel for long enough, you know I have a very close bond with my cat Bear. That's where it started. It started with me being alone and being upset, and her reassuring me, her understanding that her human, and I was the only human she was seeing at the time, because my daughter was out every weekend, and my son barely came home a lot of the time, so she really bonded with me. I was the only person she was seeing. And that's when she started making strange with anybody she didn't know. And it really blew up. She's better now with strangers, but it's taken some time. She never saw other people, so when other people would show up, she'd completely freak out. So when you're single and you're in your 40s, you learn very quickly that the dating scene kind of sucks. So on the men's side, you have something they're looking for, and usually it'll be young and hot. And on the women's side, it's usually the first question I would get was how much money I made, whether or not I own my own house, what kind of vehicle I drove. Like, I got all of these questions, and I'm like, nah, I'm never hearing from this woman again. And I was right. The only person who reached out to me first on a dating website, Yvonne. I met Yvonne in 2016, and it was April. She messaged me, and I I thought, okay, well, she seems nice. She seems nice. It's nice. That's nice that we had that interaction. But it didn't go anywhere initially, and eventually I decided these dating sites are kind of depressing me, so I deactivated my accounts on all these websites. And once you're lonely and you want to be with somebody else, you're not going to find somebody else. That's the tricky part. And I've learned over the years, and one thing that I learned once I finally had a real, girlfriend and somebody I was living with, all of a sudden, I wasn't giving off that air of loneliness, that air of desperation. And when I met a woman, I would just, chat with her the same as it didn't matter how good looking she was or anything. I didn't care. And I just started being like, hey, what's up? And so because I wasn't hitting on them, you know how cats are really curious about the people that don't pay attention to them? I have found that in some cases, a woman will feel more comfortable to talk to a man who's treating her the same as he's treating everybody else. And so once I was with my ex, there was all kinds of occasions where I definitely could have found somebody else. And at times mistakes were made. And again, in a 15-year relationship with somebody that I realized I loved that person, but I don't know that I was ever really in love with them. It just it doesn't work, the last I want to say the last 5 or 6 years I was with her, I knew I was in love with somebody else. And nothing ever happened with that other person. But I knew I was in love with somebody else. And there were times where, when I was really lonely after my ex left, that I would tell myself out loud, but if you're really that busted up about her, why were you so interested in that other person all the time? And I knew the answer to that question. I knew the answer to that question. And it wasn't necessarily that this other person was, the love of my life or anything. Although I did love that person, still do. I still think that she's great. And not only that, I would also say of my ex that all these years have passed now, and I've come to a good place and realized that on some level I will always have affection for her. I will always care about what happens to her. And if she ended up in a bad spot and needed some help, I would be willing to help her as much as I could. Which, yes, my wife is aware of. And I used to think, too, that, being common law isn't that much different from being married. I don't need to be married. It does make a difference. And with Yvonne and I, we just knew. It was very early in our relationship that I just turned to her and I said, we're going to get married, aren't we? And she just kind of goes, yeah, I think we are. And that was it. I never asked her. She never asked me. We didn't tell people that we were going to get married for months after we had that conversation, because we were like, okay, people are going to think we're nuts, so we're not going to say anything, but we're going to get, and we did. We got married. I have had no issues, but between, Bear and my other cat Shadow was huge too. Getting me through that lonely period of my life where I was by myself for a little over 2 years. I dated here and there casually, but I never really had anything serious. I don't think my brain could envision that. And I think I struggled with that until I met Yvonne, and I realized, okay, this works, this clicks, and it's been great since then. So to this day, when and I look at both channels, and Yvonne, when she met me, I had both channels, but she was not a part of it. Early on, I would have her in a video here and there, and I'd get, nobody wants to see your girlfriend. Nobody wants to see your girlfriend. Get your girlfriend off. What are you doing? And, it bothered me, because on some level, people on the internet will watch my videos daily and think, Shannon's my friend. He's my friend. And there is some level where I feel like, you know what? These subscribers, these people who follow me, I view them as my friends. I want to show them that, I've met this person. This person's great. I'm in love with this person. And so to have the reaction be, boo, boo, get rid of them. We don't care. It was like, I don't know, it was hard. And it's one of those things where I understand that it's strangers on the internet, and I understand that you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but it was difficult. And to this day, there is still somewhat of a reaction like that. So I also wanted to go through the workplaces. At the poultry farm, I met my ex. And 15 years of a relationship started because she had carpal tunnel. She wasn't able to work, and I saw her outside of work, and I asked her how she was doing, and next thing you know, I'm asking her out on a date, and one thing leads to another. Then I worked at a call center. The call center is where I found out very quickly that there were a lot of young women who were not happy in their relationships. And so, like, I would compliment them all the time, and I would get, well, my boyfriend doesn't care, and he, I'm like, your boyfriend's crazy. So there's that. But I would just ignore it after that. I'd be like, yeah, no, you look really nice today. Well, my boyfriend didn't say anything. I'm like, well, I guess he's blind then, because you look fantastic today. Have a great day. And then, of course, I would take supervisor calls, so I would rescue them from bad calls. So it was just, it was ripe for crushes to take place, and me to end up in a situation I had never been in before. Ever. And I there were times where I would turn to, in some cases, very good-looking young women and go, okay, when I was single, people who look like you had no time for me. None. So again, if you're single and watching this, you kind of have to act around women as if, not that you don't care, but that you treat them the same as you treat the guys. To some extent. And you're not hitting on them. You just don't. Just, yeah. Hey, what's up? And you just leave it at that. I did work briefly at 7-Eleven. It was around 5-6 months. I then went back to the call center. I knew I wasn't going to stay at the call center when I went back, but I knew that 7-Eleven was a dead end. I had been sold a bill of goods somewhat by a manager at 7-Eleven, and quickly after agreeing to what they said and starting to work there, I realized I've been had. They just wanted somebody they knew would come in and work all the time, because I'd been told you'll get raises often, and you can make this amount of money, and they even wrote down all the numbers on the paper. But in order to get those raises, you had to complete courses, and to complete those courses, you had to leave your your post and leave one person to run the store by themselves, which in the middle of the night I didn't like doing, because while we were in not a horrible neighborhood, it wasn't a great neighborhood either, so I wasn't getting it done, and I knew I wasn't going to advance in terms of my salary like I had wanted to. So I went back to the call center. And also, there was some shady stuff going on with how I felt like it was being run. So my manager was like, "Well, if you don't like it, quit." And I was like, "Okay." And so I came in like 2 days later. I said, "So I'm giving you my notice. I'm out of here." What? I'm like, you told me if I didn't like it to quit. So I guess people aren't used to their bluffs being called. And then I ended up at the meat plant that I was working at when I met my wife. And I worked there for 10 years. And in the time that I was there, um, again, there were certain ladies that I had interest in who may have had interest in me. And yeah, it is interesting looking back because, I am perfectly fine with being married to Yvonne, with never being single and going through the dating scene again because it sucks. And with my current setup and everything, if there was ever a situation where I was single again, I don't think I'd ever date again. I don't think I'd do it. I really don't. I don't think I'd have any desire to go through that ever again. I would just be like, all right, so I'm by myself then. Cool. I will be on my own. I'll have cats, I'll have rabbits, and I'll make YouTube videos. And that'll be it. So the other thing too is the traveling that I do, the vacations I do, there's no way I would have done that if I hadn't met Yvonne. Yvonne has been doing vacations and getaways since before she met me, since before she even had the means, I would think, to do that. But she has always found it important to take the family and do family trips. So when I met her, she was doing like family trip stuff. And yeah, we still do that now. So when people say you take, meaning me, vacations, the reality is I just jumped into Yvonne's life, and Yvonne's been doing the vacation thing for ages. The thing is, she used to go to, small town kind of places or do like camping locally, and now it's a little more extravagant than that. But there you go. I wanted to do this and do this a little bit different than the other videos, and I'll do a video as well on the places I've worked and some of the good stories from that as well. I feel like it's easier to talk about aspects of my life now rather than going in chronological order, because you get into like my parents splitting up and me being alone and going through a lot of personal difficulties, and just stuff I don't think lends itself to a particularly fun video to watch. So at any rate, third period's on now between Detroit and San Jose, so I will close this up. I'll upload this, and again, I'll get into some of this stuff later on. But thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. If you haven't already hit like and subscribe, I mean, if this is your first video of mine you're watching, that's fine. And if you're concerned that I'm getting away from the other content I've been doing, don't worry. This channel, I circle back. I know that wrestling videos are usually hits on this channel, so at some point soon I'll be doing another wrestling video. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for all your support. It is greatly appreciated, and it has been appreciated since before I met Yvonne, when the channel started to grow in the summer of 2016, and I realized I might have a shot at making some money doing this and have some fun doing this, and it's been 8+ years of doing both. It's been greatly enjoyable. I'm very happy, and thank you guys so much for that. It is greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.